Nicole from Let Nicole Help here, and in this video I want to really dive into the settings that you can apply in your workflow when a document is sent. The action completed settings in particular. Now I want to start and say that what you'll be seeing is related to a Premier subscription because the Premier subscription is what allows you to actually include specific document templates in your workflow. If you're on the standard subscription, and your workflow will just include those to-do steps and the emails. So I do want to point that out before we get started here. But let's go ahead and dive in. Now, if you saw a recent video about how to apply tags as they will move your project through the pipeline, you might be familiar with seeing this test workflow here. And we'll dive in here again, edit, and those tags were applied there for the pipeline video. But what I want to really dive in now is something that was just kind of glanced over in the previous video. So when you are sending documents up here, sending a quote, sending a contract invoice, all these documents, you're going to have this capability to also tell the workflow what you want it to do when that action is completed. That action can then be completed according to whatever setting that you need it to. So you can see I've told my workflow, consider this step complete when the first invoice payment is made. However, since I have included not just the invoice but the contract as well into this quote template that I'm using here, I would have all kinds of options. I could say when they accept the quote, let's move on in the workflow. When they sign the contract, let's move on in the workflow. Or I can even say when everything is complete, that's what I need to move on in my workflow. So you have all kinds of options, which will vary, of course, depending on the type of document that you're sending from here, this action. But my favorite is that, and most common with the clients I've worked with, would be collecting the first invoice payment on that invoice that shows up after they accept the quote, etc. And that is what considers this workflow step complete. We're going to dive into that. But one of my favorite things that can happen then when you set your workflow up this way and say this step is complete when they've made their first payment, and click save, is that it's going to automatically then move this project from perhaps a pending or inquired calendar, whatever name you like there, to a booked events calendar. That's color coding effect for your calendar, so it's really easy for you to see which jobs are official and which jobs are not. So let's go ahead and get into the template of this Nicole's Nifty Decor quote, just to see how the contract and invoice have been attached. So it's super simple. All you do is select check the box to say yes. I'll uncheck them and see what happens when I'm initially connecting these. So if I do want to include a contract, it's going to just bring up the template, or it probably will be blank, I believe, upon first selecting that, but you can go ahead and grab a template that you've already created, or you can create one on the fly. So I'll just click save there. And I also want to present an invoice to them after they've made it through the quote and the contract. So in my test account, I have not connected a payment processor. Otherwise, of course, I would be accepting payments online, so I'd be sure to check that box as well. And you can see these other settings are optional. So that is kind of the back-end setting for how I'm able to have all of those action completed options in my workflow. So those two documents are tied to my quote template that is part of the workflow, and that is how I can tell my workflow to move on when they've completed those actions I wanted them to. Now in another video, I want to dive into the really powerful payment schedules that you can also attach to your quote and invoice templates.